Well, hello, audiophile, audio friends. It's Stereo Police. I had a few minutes tonight, so I thought I'd get back to you. I semi-promised to give you an update on the Lab 12 DAC 1 reference. Since I first started making videos about the DAC 1 reference, probably more than a year ago. I think I was the early adopter of this thing. I've had at least one subscriber buy one on my recommendation. And I've had other people express interest in it. And I have something interesting to tell you about this, actually. But based on some research I did today. But I was going to get back to you to give you a review of it. And you're looking at it now, the Lab 12 DAC 1 reference. It's become my favorite DAC, and I'm going to give you a little philosophy tonight as well, because it makes a difference to this review. Because this is not a DAC for everybody, and there's a lot of persnickety people in this hobby, and I'm not criticizing anybody at all. Everyone's got their preferences, not opinions, but preferences. And I've said this before, opinions can be wrong, but preferences can never be wrong. And for those of you that are baffled by that, and I'll give you an example of someone can say, I'm of the opinion that thing there that is an apple is actually an orange. Well, that opinion is wrong. But another person can say, I prefer apples over oranges in terms of eating them. Well, that's a preference. It cannot be wrong. Okay, you see the distinction. And so opinions can be wrong, factually. And in the world of high fidelity, we are talking really about preferences, not opinions. And preferences are really, and even in the world of music, I'm sometimes criticized by my friends and family even about what kind of music I listen to. I'm more of an old school punk and more hard rock kind of guy, but it's a preference. It's my own soul music. For whatever reason, I'm wired that way, and it's a preference, and it's not wrong. And whatever you listen to, I don't care, it's not wrong. Now, segueing to equipment, here's where I get into philosophy, and I'm going to eventually talk about the Lab 12 DAC 1 reference, but whatever you like for the reasons you like it. And that's your preference. And your preferences are based on, I think, whatever it is you're seeking. Now, let me digress a little bit. Because, I think deeply about this stuff. Probably too much so. And the other day, when I made this video the other night, which got a lot of views, I was really shocked. I mean, I didn't promote that video. The video from 2 nights ago that I made, I didn't promote it. I just put it up, and it got a lot of views and a lot of good response. And I was pleased about it, but I didn't do anything. I just posted it, and wow, I got a really good response, and I was very happy about that because my only point here is to contribute, and I'll say it again. I've said it before. I've never monetized a thing on YouTube. Never made a dime. It's always about contributing, and even when I play drums, I've got my own little drum community, and it's just about contributing and about, contributing your own thing. But anyway, back to preferences. Here's where the dark side comes in, as far as I'm concerned. In my previous video, I alluded. Where do I go with this without getting way deep into the frickin' vortex. Okay, it depends on what you're looking for, what you're seeking in the audio hobby. And I said that in the middle years of my journey, it became less about the music and more about being analytical. And I thought that was not a good thing. And you can go back and watch that video. And there was a day, it was about 6 months ago, maybe a little more. I remember going into Costco. Remember that, formerly Price Club, for those of you old enough? And, you know, when you first walk into Costco, I think they're all similar. The first thing you see are all the big screen TVs. Probably the same for Best Buy or whatever, but... And they always have... Sorry, the air conditioner just came on. There might be some background noise. And then they always show, you know, whatever the latest 4K, 5K, whatever it is now, because I'm not a TV guy, whatever the latest high res is, they're always playing some pre-recorded ultra high res demo thing on them. And it's always the best you can get. And I remember when I went into Costco, I'm looking at this 70-some inch Colossus TV. And again, I'm not a TV guy. I don't watch much. I don't own those TVs anyway, but I've got 2 small Roku TVs, but that's it. And I'm watching the demo on it and looking, it's like this thing with hot air balloons and the background is nature and I'm looking at the colors and everything's perfectly in focus. The colors are ultra vivid and everything, it almost looks like animation, even though it's real. And I got to thinking, this is so good that it's bad. Does that make any sense? In other words, it's so resolved and so perfect that if I were to take that scene, wherever it is, and if I were to stand next to the camera and look with my own eyes, things would not be that perfect. The colors would not be that vivid. Things would not be that in focus everywhere, because the eyes don't work that way. Lenses don't work that way. And there would be a haze, something, you know, it just wouldn't be that way in real life. That's just how good it was. It's just too perfect. And it was almost kind of annoying to me to watch, because I'm more of a realist about what I like. And it's almost like watching some of these high-res special effects and things like that. It's just too real, you know, like the fur on a modern animated bear or something. You know, everything is just too perfect. And, okay, but granted, that might be fine for cinema. Maybe that's what you want. Maybe you want to escape reality. And that's what it takes. Maybe you want ultra reality. Maybe you want surreality, surreal. Because that's what it's become. Surreal. In a way, because it's just too good. Now, how do I relate that to audio? Well, things have gotten really good in audio, and when I listen to reviewers and I listen to people talk about audio, it seems to me, and I could be wrong, but it seems to me that the quest now is for that kind of thing, just like video, but for that same kind of thing in audio. that same kind of surreal, ultra high res, that thing that's just not reality. You're seeking, the nitpicking every little thing about resolution and detail and all these words we use to describe, what we need and what we seek in audio, and it's just not reality. And that's why I call it audio porn. It's just not reality. And that's one of the reasons, and I said in my previous video, I'm just annoyed by being annoyed. It's just not, and that's why I said I quit critical listening, and I just am more about the experience now. And I ask after I listen to a song, what do I think about the experience and how real was it, and I sort of retro reflect. Now, let me get back to this DAC, rather than make a verbose, prolonged video about it. I was going to tell you all about this DAC, and you can go back to my channel and surf a couple of videos. I've opened the top of it, I've talked about it, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about it right now. It's become my favorite DAC, but not for the reasons one might expect, not for the modern day audiophile reasons. It's not going to blow your mind. If you're into the, if you want the TV with the ultra high res and everything's in focus and everything's overly vivid and bigger than life, that's not it. It's not going to do that. My TV analogy would be, maybe the best DACs now would be the ultra high res TVs and bigger than life and ultra vivid and everything's in focus, and it's you stand next to the TV and look at the actual scene in real life, and the TV is way better than the real life scene. Maybe that's the current modern DACs, maybe, or modern equipment, maybe. DAC, preamp, amp, whatever. But we're talking about DACs right now, which is today's first source component, the first inline source. Generally, used to be cassettes or turntables, but now it's the DAC. It's the source. So what I love about the DAC, the Lab 12 DAC 1 reference, is, my analogy would be, it's the TV that's produces the image that when you stand next to the actual scene in real life and you look at the image on the TV, it's exactly the frickin' same. It's, you look at the colors and, the facial, the skin colors and the textures, and it's the same. It's not too vivid. It's not too resolved. The colors are just right. And you think you're looking at real life. It's the actual thing. And to some extent, when I watch some of that ultra high res stuff, it's kind of fatiguing after a while. It's like candy initially, but you suck on enough candy, it's the hedonist paradox. It's too much of a good thing becomes not a good thing. Real frickin' quick. It becomes disgusting. Whereas things that are really good in life, they kind of start out on a slow burn, but they last a long time. This is my philosophy, and that's why I've come to love this DAC. Now, I want to tell you something surprising in a minute, for those of you who know me, but I will say this about this DAC. It is an R2R ladder, which And I have some notes here, and I have some things, but you know what? I'm not going to get in. I'm prone to getting into technical details and engineering details because that's my background. But I'm not going to do that tonight. But I will say this: it does use paralleled Phillips TDA 1543s. There are R2R ladders. I'm looking at this data sheet right now, and the outputs are just raw. There's no built-in op amps, these things. The output is the raw current signal, which is the digital output. It doesn't need like 1-bit DACs. It doesn't need decimation filters, none of that crap. You know, the output of a 1-bit DAC is a total mess of noise. And I know there's noise shaping going on, and I know all that stuff. I know how Delta Sigma works. I know exactly how it works. And I'm not saying they're not good. I'm not saying they're not wonderful scientific instruments, but it totally obliterates. It needs. There's a lot that has to be done to bring it back to the analog domain. Whereas these R2Rs instantly bring that digital signal, that word, back to the analog domain instantly. And in that sense, my analogy is an R2R DAC is, I'll say, whether you disagree or agree with it, I'll say it's equivalent to like a vacuum tube in terms of technology, and you know, in the digital realm. It's like the first commercially viable high fidelity DAC, the R2R ladder, as was the vacuum tube to the audio world. And as we know, the vacuum tube has never left the audio world. There's characteristics and traits of it that a lot of us know. There are things that simply cannot be measured or explained. They're just better. And I think that betterment comes with simplicity. There's a scientific word for that. Simplicity. You can make things more complicated and make their specs better, but when they start out simple, there's just something. I'm lacking the word for, not evanescent. There's something. Having a brain fart. But anyway, that digital signal that leaves the R2R ladder goes right into those 6922s. Now, I don't have that data sheet in front of me. Is it 6922s? I've got to do that from memory. Those are dual triodes. Class A dual triodes. Wonderful tubes. Age-old, classic, tried and true, wonderful triodes. And again, these are 16-bit DACs, and there's 4 per channel, and they're paralleled for averaging. And that's all I want to say technically about it. Now, let me get into the final phase of this. I've told you what I love about it. In the past, I've told you today, there's just something realistic about it. I've used the word organic in the past. But the analogy today I gave you with respect to TVs is something different. I haven't told you that, but it's just... Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a link, if I'm allowed to, in the description, because what I did today, before I was about to do this review and give you my own review of it, and I'll give you sound samples tomorrow, and I'm going to compare it with a Delta Sigma 1-bit DAC. I'll give you those sound samples tomorrow, or the next day if I can. I did a search today to see if, because I mentioned 2 days ago that this wasn't really well reviewed online. Well, that was when I bought this DAC. I was an early adopter of this company and this DAC. And when I first bought this DAC over a year ago, I believe, nobody had reviewed it. I had first heard of this company at the Washington, D.C. Audio show, Audio Fest up in Maryland. They had their own room, and I was intrigued by it, and there happened to be a local dealer in Richmond, Virginia. Unfortunately, they went under. They're gone now, as many of these audio dealers do. They try their best, but they went under. But I got my Suono and my Lab 12 DAC 1 reference from them, and good guy. I'm still friends with the owner. But but where was I going with this? I heard them at an audio fest, and about 2 years ago, and that's how I came to know them. And this thing wasn't reviewed. And this morning, before I was about to do my own review, lo and behold, it's now been reviewed multiple times online, and including what's the chap's name? Steve Guttenberg, one of the big reviewers. I was shocked because I don't really watch the guy. So I just typed in Lab 12 DAC 1 reference review, and that came up in Google. I was like, oh, well, shucks. It has been reviewed since I bought it. So I watched his complete review. And it was outstanding. And when I say outstanding, I mean everything he said about it has been my experience. Everything Guttenberg said about it is absolutely 100% true. 100%. I couldn't do a better review if I tried. I might as well not do my own review because he said everything I'm thinking about it. And what I like about his review is he didn't use any of the fancy, goofy audio words. He actually used plain language, which I'm a fan of. And he was fair, very fair to the DAC, and very true to what I've experienced. 100% true. Which I don't know why I was shocked, but I was shocked. It was 100% true. So I will invite you to watch Steve Guttenberg's review of it, because I could not do better. And I'll put a link to that review in my description, or you can type it in on your own, because I started watching that review with a lot of skepticism. I was ready to pounce on it if things went south. But nope. Every bit of that review was perfect. And again, I'll leave it at that. I could not. In fact, there were things that he said about it that I wouldn't even have thought about saying that were brilliant. So I'll leave it at that. Steve's review is my review. But what I'll do tomorrow or the next day, I'll do something that some of the reviewers don't do. I'll give you a comparison through, with my system, with the Macintosh C8, with the Lab 12 Suono single-ended triode mode Class A tube amp through the Klipschorns, a comparison with a cold Heart of Steel. I'll use my DAC, which was my previous favorite DAC. It's got an AKM Delta Sigma single bit DAC in it, outstanding, and I'll just give you the difference between the two and see if you can tell. I know it's hard to tell, after having been recorded, but I'll use my Zoom microphone. We'll go from there. But thanks for watching. I highly recommend this, but based on everything I've said, now listen to what I've said in totality. This is not a DAC for everyone. It depends on what your preferences are, what you're looking for. In summary, if you're looking for bigger than life, ultra high res, surreality, surreal stuff, things that really don't exist in real life, and that's what you're seeking, then this probably won't be the DAC for you. But if you want something that actually produces music the way I think real life sounds like, this thing is amazing. Depends on, and I am no longer going to criticize audiophiles. Well, no longer. I don't think I ever did, but it just depends on what you are seeking. And the Lab 12 DAC 1 reference is what I was seeking. I'm not even sure I knew what I was seeking before I found this thing, but it's what I was seeking. Cheers. Hope you enjoyed the philosophy. Glad to be back with you. Thank you for joining me. Stereo Police. Ciao.